Well, welcome to this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Good. I'm thrilled again today to be joined by Paul McGee, who is a renowned speaker from the UK, known for his expertise on change, workplace relationships, and motivation. He has captivated audiences in over 1,000 organizations across 40 countries and is a best-selling author of such books as Sumo, Shut Up and Move On, and the latest edition of How to Succeed with People, a personal favorite of mine, which will be the topic for this episode. In today's conversation, we're going to uncover why respect is more important than likability and how focus, determination, and confidence can backfire if overused. We're also going to highlight the value of humility and admitting mistakes and share a powerful approach for leaders when they give feedback. At the end of the episode, we're going to give you some tips on how leaders can make others feel valued, because the best leaders are mad about their people, which in this case, MAD stands for making a difference. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we engage with esteemed thought leaders and explore research-backed strategies and techniques that empower leaders at every level to achieve meaningful results that drive lasting change. Well, with new managers, I see this, where they want to make a positive difference, and they think that is being liked. And they don't know the difference between being respected and being liked. And I agree with you, Paul. If you want to make a positive difference in life, you got to recognize that means you're not always going to be the liked person. People with the need to be liked, like you said, people pleasers, they don't change the world.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a quote from Robin Sharma, the author. Yeah, I think that's been part of my flaw in the past. Is I want to be popular and I want to be liked. And I remember working with I was chatting to someone about their work, and they went, "Yeah, we got this really difficult boss. They're nothing like the old one." And I went, "Oh, well, tell me about the other one." "Oh, they were great. You know, if you'd had too much to drink on a Friday night and you rang in sick on the Saturday, they were like, 'Oh, don't worry, it's fine.' This other boss, honestly, he challenges you about things. He's always talking about, we need to do this, we need to do that. He doesn't let you get away with the stuff that the other boss did. The other boss was great." And I'm like, yeah, but maybe there was a reason why that other boss was fired ultimately, because they were liked and they were popular and everyone loved them, but the business wasn't performing. I think it's possible to be respected and to be liked. But, in the UK at the moment, we have a new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and he doesn't have the personality or the charisma of a Boris Johnson. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't want an entertainer or a clown in charge of my country. I want someone who is competent. Now, I might not warm to Keir Starmer. I might not want to have an evening with him, but I respect him for his courageous decisions he's made. Now, I may grow to like him as well, but I want to have someone in charge of my country, or if I was an employee in a business, who I respect rather than who I think's a really good laugh and very popular. More important to be respected than to be, seen as nice, but you can have both.
And that's something that a lot of new leaders need to focus on more and realize the distinction between the two. There's also certain qualities that great leaders have. You mentioned a few in the book. Focus, determination, and confidence are all traits admired in people. They're signs of strength. They're traits that every leader needs to possess in order to be success. But if taken to the extreme, they can also be a cause of a person's downfall. And it's probably fair to say, which I'm sure you agree with, is that two other qualities should be at the top of the list that many people don't realize, and those are humility and a willingness to be wrong.
Sure. Some people say that a weakness can be an overused strength. So I think maybe a strength of mine is I can get passionate about stuff. I'm very enthusiastic. But if you're too passionate and too enthusiastic, you overlook the detail. And as I say, we alluded to earlier on, and maybe you railroad over other people and don't allow for their opinions. If you're very focused, and I am a very focused person at times, but you could also be perceived as narrow-minded and not flexible and prepared to consider other options. So is it a skill? Is it a strength? Focus? Yeah. But too much determination. I do think sometimes we need to have again, you mentioned the word humility. There is a difference between persevering and being determined and just being ridiculous in terms of this is not going to work. Yes, but I'm determined it will. Well, it takes more courage at times just to say, I'm going to call a day on that one and I'm going to draw a line. Determination is good, but it can make you stubborn and you're not prepared. I mean, there are things going on in the world right now, aren't there, where people are very determined in the world of politics and the world of business to do certain things. And a lot of other people are saying maybe it's time to not do what you're thinking of doing and do something different, or maybe it's time to move over graciously. So be careful of being too determined because it can turn to stubbornness, and that stubbornness can lead to stupid decisions. And then the confidence, very simply, that can become arrogance, can't it? And hubris. Confidence can lead to complacency. So they're all great strengths, but overdone, they become a weakness.
And more leaders should try that approach that says, I may be wrong on this, but this is how I'm currently feeling about things. Now, there's a right way and a right context to use that phrase in, and a wrong context, because when a decision needs to be made, times of great uncertainty, you need to make that decision and have confidence in it. But it also, by stating it this way, I may be wrong on this, it shows authenticity, vulnerability, that I don't have all the answers, that I have all of you I'm depending on to help me out here.
Again, you make a really important point. But one of the most successful, well-known British entrepreneurs, who's I think well known in the States, well, is Richard Branson, and he talks about the key to his success is surrounding himself with people who know more about things than he does. And I see that in sports coaches as well in the UK. And that sense of which I haven't got all the answers, just because maybe I'm the leader doesn't mean I know everything about everything. And therefore, there are times when it is helpful to say, you know what, I may be wrong on this, but this is what I'm sensing. What are your thoughts? But you make a hugely important point, Charles. It's about the context. If I'm having brain surgery, and the surgeon's going, look, I don't know. I'm looking at the X-rays and the MRI scans, and I don't know. I'm thinking of doing this, Paul. I mean, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. No, no, no. I don't be authentic. I need you to be black and white. Is it what we're going to do? And I literally had this recently. I have some issues with my feet, and I had my feet X-rayed. Went to see this consultant, but he wasn't looking at my X-rays going, look, I don't know. What's your thoughts on this, Paul? I'd like your feedback. He's the expert. He knows. And he didn't use the phrase, I could be wrong. He was very specific and very clear. But if he's leading a team of people in his practice, and he's thinking about how he should maybe restructure the team, maybe on that in that context, he say, look, I may be wrong, but I'm thinking that we maybe do this. What are other people's thoughts? So it's very vital, very vitally important you find the right context.
And the other quality that I think all leaders could learn from that is not talked about enough is humility. And someone once told me that humility really is not thinking less of yourself, it's just thinking less about yourself. And more leaders could embrace that humility piece, I think they'd be definitely more effective.
And again, and they very much they're kind of like bedfellows, aren't they? That be willing to be wrong in humility, and also no matter how much of an expert you are, your expertise can be very quickly overnight become outdated due to new developments, new technology, new discoveries, and I just feel that it's it's a trait I always want to have. There's an actual a saying in the Hebrew Bible that talks about act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Now, I appreciate not everyone might have a faith, but I almost have that as a bit of a mantra. I want to act justly in what I do and love mercy, but I want to walk humbly. And humbly doesn't mean, as you say, putting yourself down, be very self-deprecating. But the majority of the people who are listening to this podcast or watching it are already very successful people. Wonderful. You know, I've written an equivalent of a New York Times bestseller. I've sold nearly 500,000 books, spoken in over 40 countries. Big deal. Walk humbly, Paul. Have some humility. You can learn from anybody and everybody. And I think that keeps me grounded. I think when you begin to believe your own publicity, that's a dangerous place to be.
And humble leaders, they really go by the golden rule and the platinum rule. And the golden rule is, you want to treat people as you want to be treated, but now that's not necessarily the ideal. The ideal more is the platinum rule. You want to treat other people as they want to be treated for you to succeed better with others.
Sure. I mean, if I meet you for the first time, Charles, and I don't know what makes you tick or anything, I'm going to treat you how I want to be treated, which is with courtesy and with respect. But the more I get to know you and you get to know me, I realize that when I say, hey, I've got tickets for the game on Saturday, you go, I hate that. I would hate the thought of that. You'll love it, Charles. It's like, no, no, no. It's like one of my team. He's quiet, he's shy, he's an introvert, he hates being the center of attention. I think it's fair to say he's not a clone of me. Now, if he was at one of my sessions and I said, my colleague Kev has been working with us for over 14 years, he's an absolute star. Kev, come to the front, let's give Kev a round of applause. He would die. I can cope with the recognition and the round of applause. But if I treat Kev how I want to be treated, we have a big problem. So as a starting point, the golden rule is brilliant. But the platinum rule is when you get to know your people and realize what motivates you doesn't motivate them. What your current needs are could be very different to theirs. Treat people how they want to be treated. Very important.
Let's move now into criticism. If you want to succeed with people, at times you have to give them constructive criticism, which doesn't make it any easier to receive. No matter how self assured that individual may be, like the rest of us, they have a tendency to fast forward through that word constructive and pause on the word criticism. You have a great approach that I've used, and I want you to share with everyone else about giving someone feedback that points to the positives.
Sure. Well, I think, and again, it comes back to that red cap, fast brain, fight or flight. No, you're very different. You're very unusual. If you wake up every morning going, I can't wait to get some criticism today. It's an opportunity to grow. It's not kind of where most people are at. So again, recognize that for some people, when you've got to give them some criticism, even if you frame it as it's constructive, they can be likely on the defensive. But when you say to people, either you ask them or you say, do you know what? I was observing how you did that presentation, you ran that meeting, how you were with that sales call. Here's some of the things that I thought what worked well. WWW, what worked well. And then also then maybe add this, even better if. And just that sense of, rather than go what you did wrong or one of your weaknesses, even better if, ... And you can draw those things out from people so they can reflect and, okay, so what worked well? Well, I suppose this way. Yeah. And then you reinforce it and you add some additional things. And then even better if, well, I didn't think I was as prepared for that call as I could have been, or the presentation, I realized I probably gave them too many slides. There's too much detail. Okay. So what's the plan? What's the way forward? And you leave people with a sense of, I've got some information here that's equipped me to do better next time, rather than I've been told off and I've been criticized personally.
The other piece really around succeeding with people is not looking at the tough maybe conversations, but how do you make them feel special? And you have a great acronym to help leaders do just that. And perhaps you can go through it. That first piece of it is the S, which is to serve them.
Sure. And yeah, so that whole, it's in two parts in the book, but how to make people feel special, and every SPECIAL, it makes that word. And yeah, S for serve. I just think it's having that heart that, yes, you want to perhaps achieve results through people and get performance, but as a leader, having that attitude of, I'm here to serve you so you can do a great job. It's just a great attitude, isn't it? And I told you about what I have as one of my little mantras, but one of my other little mantras that I have when I'm speaking is serve, shine, inspire. I am here. When I show up, and tomorrow I'm speaking to a group of people in the health sector, there'll be 250 people in the room, and people say, "Don't you ever get nervous?" And I'm like, "Well, I get adrenalized, but I'm not there just to show off." And what do you think of Paul McGee? I am there for an hour and 30 minutes tomorrow to serve my audience. That helps me focus on them and get less anxious about me. And I just think it's a great quality to take with you.
Absolutely. The next is P in special is personalized. Make people feel special and important by personalizing your encounters with them. It's no guarantee, but it's definitely worth the effort, especially once you get to know someone. Know their kids, know what's happening in their life, and connect it in a deeper way so they feel like you really care about them.
There's a famous soccer manager in the UK called Pep Guardiola. He's Catalan, Spanish. And when he joined Manchester City in 2016, and I've done work on and off with City for a number of years, he made contact with someone at the club and said, "I want the names and a little picture of every member of staff who works in the first team centre. And I want one or two lines about every single one." When he walked into work on that first day, he said to Claire, who works in player care, "Hey, Claire, it's great to meet you. I'm really looking forward to working with you." He said to Linda, who was involved in washing the players' kit and training kit, "Linda, great to meet you. Hey, am I hearing right? You've worked for City for over 30 years? Linda's floating." Claire said this to me. She said, "Paul, Pep Guardiola used my name more in the first 7 days of being here than the previous two managers had done in the previous 7 years." Personalised thing. If you get a Valentine's card, you want to open it. You don't want to read "to whom it may concern." You want your own flipping name on it, don't you? And it is just about thinking about what My wife. There's just little things. I'll sometimes go away, and there'll be little chocolates left on my bed or something. I'm not always into. I'm only into a certain kind of chocolate. I come home. I got this here. She loves puzzles and Sudoku and all these wordles and everything else. I'm sometimes get a hold of the newspaper. I throw the paper away, but I keep that page that I had that puzzle on or that crossword, bring it back to her. And she's just, "Oh, you're my hero." Thinking, flipping heck, I wish you'd say that a bit more often. But it's the thoughtfulness and it is the personalizing of things. Very, very powerful.
The next letter in special is encourage, and no one has ever said, "You know what my problem is? I've had too much encouragement." And you bring insight into the origins of the word, which literally means to give courage. And that might mean the courage to start something, the courage not to quit. But in a world of setbacks, disappointments, where people are quick to criticize you and pull you down, we all need the oxygen of encouragement.
I'll give you one example. My Sumo book was rejected by 13 publishers, and I'm with my friend Paul Sandham. And he says, "But I love your Sumo book. I think it could help a lot of people. I just think you need to push a few more doors." I said, "Paul, I have pushed a lot of doors." And he said to me, "Well, just try pushing a few more because you only need one to open." That book sold 250,000 copies. It's translated to 13 different languages. And yet it was the conversation I had with one person who gave me the courage to keep on going. And a phrase I use at times: words change worlds. You don't know how your words could help shape and influence and change someone's world. We can get discouraged, we can get disappointed, and I think we sometimes just need to think, breathe a bit of life into someone, give them a bit of encouragement. Don't delude them, don't encourage them to follow their delusions, but when it's appropriate, recognize. Even just saying to someone, "You're doing a good job." "Yeah, but I'm not quite as much achieved as much as I wanted to." "Okay, you're still on the journey, but you're making great progress. Hang on in there, it's going well." Oh, that can just, the engagement you might get from that person because you encourage them. And guess how much it cost you? Your breath. That's all.
The next letter C is courtesy, and courtesy may seem old fashioned in the world today, but it lies at the heart of showing respect for others. So never underestimate how the positive impact of using the words please and thank you can be to others.
I just think everyone has value, and I appreciate if whatever any someone's serving me. I know that in the States, particularly, the tipping culture, we don't have that so much in the UK. But I want to make eye contact with people, maybe ask them their name and thank them for what they've done. And as I'm leaving a restaurant, at a hotel, it's busy at breakfast. I'm still looking out for the waiter or the person who signed me in and went, "Hey, thanks very much. Have a great day." It makes me feel good, but I think courtesy can really make other people feel good as well.
The next letter in the acronym is I, and that's for interest. Be interested in other people. Someone once told me if you want to be interesting to other people, be interested in them. Don't try to be more interesting.
Absolutely. We can, if we're not careful, we think the way to impress people is to talk all about ourselves. And although I'm talking a lot about myself on this podcast in this context, but I've just had a meeting with a friend who's over from Dubai, and it's just been great catching up. But I would probably say in the conversation that lasted only 2 hours, probably she did 70% of the talking. But I'm interested in her. And she was very happy to chat. And I think she feels good about our encounter and our conversation. I feel I know more about her as a result. Let's not think it's all about us, it's about them. And if you want to succeed with people, be interested rather than just think you've got to be interesting.
Absolutely. The next letter, A, for appreciation. I love your insight here. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So complacency can creep into all of our relationships if we're not careful and make sure that we take the necessary steps to not breed that apathy that comes from familiarity. And you have a great acronym here that I love is MAD. Be mad about making a difference in someone else's life and showing appreciation to them.
Sure. My son was 15 at the time, and he came home from school one day and we talked about school and his future. And he said, "Dad, I want to become a doctor." And I'm like, "That's great, Matt." Bit of a surprise. And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, the last time we were talking about school, you told me how you hated biology." He tells me how he's got this new teacher. She's very enthusiastic. She's much more disciplined than the other teacher was. She won't let people get away with things because she knows it's more important to be respected than to be liked. She's passionate about the subject. Charles, my son is a doctor now. He hated biology. One teacher changed him, his whole future, and the ripple effect that's had. Now, I used to tell this story about this one teacher, Mrs. Shaw, and then it occurred to me I've never met her and I've never thanked her. And I thought I need to change that. I sent her a little card and I did actually say, "Hello, Mrs. Shaw. You and I have never met, but I talk about you behind your back." And I tell people you're mad. You made a difference. You're making a difference because it wasn't the curriculum. It wasn't the school. It was you. You were the catalyst to my son wanting to become a doctor. And I just wanted to say thank you. Do you know what, Charles? She got back in touch. "Mr. McGee, I was thrilled to hear how Matt is getting on. Would you please pass on my best wishes? Oh, and by the way, your card just made my year." Never underestimate the impact and the importance of showing other people appreciation.
And the final letter in special, which is a great way to end the podcast, because I think if you want to succeed with people and you want to communicate more effectively, no one ever realizes the impact of listening in their communication practices. It's a bigger subject than most of us are aware of, and we need to put it back on people's radars. To listen really well takes skill, takes effort, but it makes a huge impact with any and all leaders.
I don't know what the exact figures are, but I used to quote that we can think 4 times faster than people can speak. Whatever the exact figures are, but it's like when people say, "Oh, someone tells me their name and I instantly forget it." You didn't forget it, you just didn't listen. Because while they're telling you what their name is, your brain, which can think at least 4 times faster than the other person can speak, you're sussing them out. What do I think about them based on their body language, eye contact, smile, strength of handshake or fist bump or whatever it is, what they're wearing? Oh, and I've also got to think about my next question. And we are biologically challenged when it comes to listening. Let's be honest, we get distracted. But what I also want to think about is it's a lot about attitude and just thinking, I need to choose here. to deliberately make more of an effort to listen. And listen doesn't always mean saying nothing. It might mean, sorry, tell me more about that. Or when you mention this, could you just elaborate on that more? Or describe to me exactly what happened. So you can ask probing questions, but understand more about their world and where they're coming from. And again, there's a whole seminar on this, isn't there? It's not just what people say, but it's the tone in which they say it. So if you say, hey, how was your weekend? And they go, yeah, it was fine. You said the word fine, but is something else happening? And they might go, yeah, but I don't want to talk about it. Or they might go, well, actually, yeah. And then they might open up. And I actually say to people, to leaders, and this is why sometimes it's helpful to be in the room with people, listen with your eyes, not just your ears, because their non-verbal communication can say something to you as well. So it's the most underused and undervalued tool that any manager or leader has, and that is cultivating and working on the art of being an effective listener. Sometimes what your people need is not a good talking to, but a good listening to.
Absolutely. And you even mentioned too that as you're listening, before you interject too quickly, develop the gift of the gap. Allow people space. Don't feel the need to fill every silence.
And again, it's not easy because you just want to butt in, and sometimes just that gentle head nod. And people might tell you some information, but it's a bit like the iceberg. There's a lot going on under the water. And sometimes by allowing a little bit of silence, or if saying, oh, well, we just weren't getting on at work. We weren't getting on. And you're like, okay. Yeah, I mean, when I say we weren't getting on, I mean, obviously, and then something else can happen. But we are too quick. Fill the gap, fill the silence. Yeah, the gift of the gap is allowing the other person a little bit of time. Because I've got a background in counselling as well. And I'm not saying you've got to become a therapist with your staff, but if you can pause occasionally and just think there might be something else they want to say, don't be too quick to fill that silence and that gap. Allow them maybe to speak a little bit more.
Well, thank you, Paul, for joining me today. Before we end, I always like to give a call to action to our listeners. We covered lots of great things, lots of practical tips. Is there one thing they should get started with in improving or succeeding with other people?
I think it's that last thing I've been talking about. It's about actually asking yourself when you're next in a conversation with somebody, what percentage of the time are you doing the talking? Because you could argue when you're doing the talking, you're not really listening. You're just expressing what you already know. But when you start to do the listening, you can learn a lot. So my challenge to your viewers and your listeners is, in the next 7 days, be intentional, whether it's with your children, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with a colleague, a client, or a customer. Be more intentional about giving someone a good listening to.
Love that. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you and learn more about your work.
Sure. I mean, I'm on social media a lot. If you just put anywhere on any platform, the Sumo guy, whether it's on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, X, if you are looking the Sumo guy, you will come across me. And my website is thesumoguy.com.
I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.